Imagine waking up one morning and the government tells you your gold is no longer yours. Not stolen, not taxed, just taken. Legally, officially, with the full force of the state behind it. You'd think this was tyranny. You'd think this was ancient history. But it happened here, in the United States of America, within living memory. Two civilizations, 2,000 years apart. One identical move. Why would the most powerful governments in human history fear something that fits in your palm? What does gold know that they don't want you to know? Let's start with a truth most history teachers skip. Gold is not just money. Gold is power made portable. You can carry it across borders. You can hide it from kings. You can spend it when paper is worthless. Governments have always understood this, and they've always hated it. Because gold answers to no one. Not to an emperor, not to a president, not to a central bank. At its peak, Rome's economy was the most sophisticated the ancient world had ever seen. Historians estimate Rome's GDP represented nearly 30% of total global economic output. Think about that. One city, one empire, nearly a third of all the world's wealth. And running through it all, like blood through a body, was gold and silver. The aureus, Rome's gold coin. The denarius, Rome's silver coin. These weren't just currency, they were trust, crystallized into metal. Every coin that left the Roman mint carried the emperor's face. That wasn't vanity, that was a message. This coin is real. This empire is real. You can trust this. But empires are expensive. Wars are expensive. And when the bills came due, Rome made a choice that America would copy almost exactly 2,000 years later. To understand what Rome did and why America followed, you need to understand one simple concept: debasement. It sounds technical. It isn't. Here's the analogy. Imagine you run a bakery. Your bread recipe calls for 100% wheat flour, but flour is expensive. So one day you swap 10% of the flour for cheap sawdust. The bread looks the same, it feels the same. Most customers don't notice. So the next month you add 20% sawdust, then 40%, then 80%. At some point, it stops being bread. That is exactly what Rome did to its coins. In the early Republic, the denarius was 95% pure silver. By the reign of Emperor Nero, 64 AD, it had dropped to 90%. Still mostly silver, still mostly trustworthy, but the slope had begun. By 200 AD, 50% silver. By 265 AD, just 2% silver. Let that land. 2%. Roman citizens would scratch their coins in the marketplace just to check if they were real. Merchants started refusing official Roman currency. They demanded payment in grain, in land, in foreign gold. The empire was still printing money, but the money had stopped meaning anything. Beat. Now here's where Rome made its most desperate move. Emperor Diocletian, ruling in 301 AD, issued the Edict on Maximum Prices, one of the most audacious economic interventions in human history. He essentially told the entire Roman economy, you will charge these prices, no more, no exceptions. Over 1,000 goods and services, fixed prices, by imperial decree. Violators faced the death penalty. Did it work? Of course not. Merchants hid their goods rather than sell at a loss. Shortages exploded. The black market became the real economy. And gold, physical, private, unhoardable gold, became the one thing people trusted, which meant gold had to go. By the late 3rd century, Rome was drowning. Military spending had tripled in 50 years. Plague had wiped out nearly a third of the population in some provinces. And the currency? Worthless paper, except Rome's was worthless bronze. Here's what people don't realize. When currency collapses, it doesn't happen like a bomb. It happens like a slow fever. First, prices creep up. Then they jump. Then they run.
Roman historical records, the papyri discovered in Egypt, show wheat prices increased by over 15,000% between 200 AD and 300 AD. 15,000%. That's not inflation. That's economic annihilation. And in the middle of that annihilation, gold sat quietly in private hands, taunting the empire, outlasting it. So what did Rome do? It did what every desperate government does. It came for the gold. Various emperors issued edicts restricting private gold holdings. Gold was to be surrendered to the imperial treasury. Private gold transactions became suspicious, potentially treasonous. The ratio between official gold and silver was fixed by decree, even as the market disagreed violently. Citizens who held gold weren't seen as savers. They were seen as hoarders, enemies of stability, threats to the imperial order. Sound familiar? March 6, 1933. Franklin Roosevelt has been president exactly 2 days. The American banking system is in freefall. Over 4,000 banks have failed since 1930. Unemployment is at 25%. And Americans, terrified, are doing exactly what Romans did 1,600 years earlier. They are hoarding gold. Because when paper fails, gold endures. Roosevelt understood this, and it terrified him. Because every ounce of gold sitting in a private citizen's mattress was an ounce not backing the banking system. Every private hoard was a quiet vote of no confidence in the government. So on April 5, 1933, just weeks into his presidency, Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102. The order required all Americans to turn in their gold coins, gold bullion, and gold certificates to the Federal Reserve by May 1, 1933. In exchange, paper dollars, at a rate the government set, $20.67 per ounce. And once the gold was safely collected, Roosevelt changed the price to $35 per ounce. The government bought your gold at $20.67, then immediately revalued it at $35, a 69% increase overnight. If you had kept your gold, you would have been 69% wealthier the next morning. Instead, the government was. This wasn't a bailout. This wasn't stimulus. This was a transfer of wealth from private citizens to the state, dressed up in the language of patriotism and emergency, executed with the full force of law. Penalties for non-compliance? Up to 10 years in prison, up to $10,000 fine, nearly $230,000 in today's money. Rome called gold holders enemies of imperial stability. America called them hoarders threatening national recovery. Different centuries, identical playbook. Now, did it work? In the short term, arguably yes. Roosevelt's Gilded order allowed the Federal Reserve to expand the money supply. Credit flowed again. Banks stabilized. The New Deal was funded. America pulled out of the Depression, though economists still debate how much credit the gold order deserves versus wartime spending. But here's what the textbooks quietly skip. The consequences of severing Americans from gold were enormous, and they stretched for decades. Consequence 1. The dollar was unmoored.
Before Executive Order 6102, every dollar in circulation was theoretically backed by gold. You could, in principle, walk into a bank and demand gold for your paper. After 1933, not anymore. For American citizens, paper was paper. Gold was just a government asset. The dollar was now backed by faith. Faith in the government. Faith in the Federal Reserve. Faith that the paper in your pocket would be worth something tomorrow. And that faith has been tested repeatedly. Since 1933, the US dollar has lost approximately 97% of its purchasing power. A dollar in 1933 bought what roughly $23 buys today. The gold standard didn't just protect your savings, it disciplined governments. It forced them to live within limits. Remove the limit, and the spending never stops. Consequence 2. A two-tiered system was born. Here's a detail most people never hear. Executive Order 6102 applied to American citizens, not to foreign governments, not to foreign central banks. They could still exchange dollars for gold at the official rate. So a French citizen couldn't hold gold.
The French government could convert dollars to gold all day long. In the 1960s, French President Charles de Gaulle, understanding exactly what this meant, famously sent ships to New York to convert French dollar reserves into physical gold. He saw the dollar as an American weapon. He wasn't wrong. This tension between a paper dollar system and gold-hungry foreign powers came to a head in 1971. President Nixon, facing a run on U.S. gold reserves, made an announcement that restructured the entire global economy. He closed the gold window. Permanently. No more gold for anyone. Dollar? Fully fiat. Fully faith-based. This moment, known as the Nixon shock, is the reason every currency on Earth today is backed by nothing but government promises. And it started with Roosevelt's gold order 40 years earlier. Consequence 3. Rome's warning was never learned. Let's go back to Rome for a moment, because the Roman story didn't end with gold seizures. It ended with collapse. The Western Roman Empire fell in 476 AD, but the economic death came earlier. By the mid-3rd century, Rome's internal trade had fractured. Cities that once hummed with commerce went quiet. The middle class, merchants, craftsmen, small landowners, was essentially wiped out by inflation. What remained were two classes: the very rich, who owned land and held real assets, and the very poor, who owned nothing. Sound familiar? When the currency collapses, wealth doesn't disappear, it concentrates. The people who held real assets, land, gold, silver, grain, survived. The people who trusted the official currency were wiped out. Every single time. This is not ancient history. This is a pattern. Consequence 4. The psychological price. There's one consequence historians rarely measure: the psychological cost. For generations of Americans before 1933, gold wasn't an investment, it was a right, a form of financial sovereignty. The government couldn't inflate it, couldn't print more of it, couldn't secretly devalue it. That strongbox in the farmhouse wasn't greed, it was independence. It was the knowledge that no matter what Washington did, no matter how badly the banks behaved, you had something real. Executive Order 6102 didn't just take gold, it took that feeling, that security, that quiet, private power, and it replaced it with a piece of paper that said, "Trust us." Consequence 5. Gold was silenced, but never gone. Here's the good news, or at least the partial resolution. In December 1974, President Gerald Ford signed legislation that restored Americans' right to own gold. After 41 years, 4 decades where private gold ownership was, with limited exceptions, illegal in the land of the free. Gold was back, but the monetary system it once anchored was gone forever. Today, gold is an investment, a hedge, a collectible, but it is no longer money, not officially, not legally, not systemically. The link between gold and the dollar, that disciplining chain, was broken in 1933, severed permanently in 1971. And what replaced it? The Federal Reserve's judgment, the Treasury's discretion, political will, human decisions. Rome trusted its emperors to manage the currency honestly. We know how that ended. Here is the uncomfortable truth at the center of all of this. Husic, quiet, minimal. Every time a government has seized gold, it has been called necessary, called patriotic, called temporary. And every single time, it was really about control. Control of money, control of the economy, control of what citizens can protect themselves with when the official system fails. Gold has outlasted every empire that tried to confiscate it. It outlasted Rome. It outlasted the gold standard. It has outlasted every currency ever minted by any civilization in recorded history. The Roman citizen burying gold in his garden in 270 AD, and the American grandmother sewing gold coins into her mattress in 1933 were doing the same thing, protecting something real from people with the power to make everything else unreal. The question isn't whether governments will try this again. History is clear on that. The question is, will you know it when you see it? If a government told you to turn in your gold tomorrow, would you? Or, more importantly, do you think it could happen again? Drop your answer in the comments. Because the people who say that was different, that was another time, are saying the exact same thing Roman citizens said in 260 AD. If this video made you think differently about money, about history, about who really controls your wealth, hit subscribe. Because next week, we're going deeper. The silver lie, how Rome's coins became worthless and what it means for your savings today.